It's Jason Furno here with the Mining Mavericks. The Mining Mavericks are a curated group of industry leaders who are passionate about making the industry better and more sustainable for everyone. Today, I'm really excited to have the opportunity to have a conversation with Mr. Roy Slack. Roy, how's it going?
Very good. Very good. Thanks for the invitation, Jason. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. For our listeners, for a bit of context, you've been in the business for 40 plus years within mining and metals companies like BLM, Mining Services, JS Redpath, Mine Project Services, Cementation, and then, as we were just talking about before we jumped on, you sit on the board of Torex. You were also formerly the president of the Canadian Institute of Mining. So quite the resume there, Roy.
Well, yeah, I tell people I'm a mining engineer that's never done any mining engineering because I've been in contracting and mine construction pretty much my whole career. And it's been very rewarding. I remember when I first got into contracting, I'd been in about 8 years. Mm-hmm. A mining company offered me a job, and by that time I was hooked on contracting. I couldn't go, I decided not to go into mine operations, and I stuck with contracting, and it's exciting, challenging, very rewarding. So that's been my career.
Yeah. What was the biggest appeal to the contracting side? Because that's a pretty early decision to make. Not everybody makes that choice early on in their career like that.
I guess I'd been on a couple of projects from start to finish. Getting involved in the engineering, going to site as the chief engineer on the project, bringing it through to completion, and then going as project manager and helping with the team to create a successful project. And that was early in my career. That was very rewarding. And then what that transformed into was starting companies.
Okay.
Bringing a team together and making those companies with the team successful. So I guess that process, whether it's a project or a company, is something I got hooked on early.
So I'm going to ask a few more questions about it because I think it's really,
yeah, sure.
I'm super interested in this. Is it the relationships and forming the team and then seeing what the team is capable of? You know, is there a certain aspect of building a project and then building a company? You know, what's the common thread there for you?
It may sound odd, but I really like the creativity challenge. And I have to explain that because if you set up a project with the traditional org chart, no matter what team you pull around you, nobody's going to fit perfectly into every box. And so what you do with the team is you figure out how you can be successful and how everyone can be successful. And it's different on every project. Same thing goes with a company. When you build the company, you know, the ideal people you'd have in each position, that's not the way it works in real life. And you've got to look at how that company comes together. You've got to look at the different opportunities and the clients you work with. So like, I really feel, you know, the concept of a business manager or a leader has a lot more to do with creativity than it has to do with some of the traditional things we think about when we think about project management or corporate management.
Yeah, let's go deeper in that because I like that. I agree with you. I think there's a ton of creativity around building a team and an organization for that matter. So I'd be curious, do you have any particular methodology or any tools that you use when is it intuition? Is it experience? Is it all of the above?
I guess the answer is no. There's no methodology there, but to be quite honest, the first company I led I did bring in a couple people I'd worked with, so I knew their capability. And that's what you can do when you start small as an entrepreneur or a startup. You can bring in people you know. And when we started cementation in 98, I brought in 4 people to work with me. And they were all people I'd worked with for a long time. And I knew their capabilities and I knew where their passions were. And we were very aligned in what we wanted to do. So it was exciting. It was very familiar because I'd worked with people before. And now we begin to talk about trust, right? There are people you've worked with, you trust. And when we started carrying out work, we were carrying out work with clients that we knew well.
Okay.
We knew them personally. There was a background there. And again, there was that foundation of trust. I haven't really thought about how that fits into the whole equation, but we all know how important trust is to, relationships on a project. But it goes further than that. It is foundational in building a business too.
I agree with that. No, I agree with that totally. It makes me think, Roy, you'd asked us to speak last year at the CIM Global Capital Project Symposium about the Mavericks and what we're doing with the Mavericks. And one of the themes that is consistent across every roundtable we've had is the concept of building trust, creating trust, having trust, and how paramount that is to, really forming a relationship that's productive and effective and, can be efficient. So I think there's a ton of truth in that.
One of the, when I work with management, one of the areas we work on is how to build and sustain trust. There's a quote, trust, I'm trying to remember how it goes. I think it's trust leaves on horseback and returns on foot.
That's right.
It's a long time to build up trust, and there's some very simple things that can break it down quickly. And maybe I'm, I might digress a bit, but we do project management in terms of training project managers, and we have the PMI, we have the Project Management Institute and the PMBOK, those things. We don't spend much time on project leadership. And I think that's a missing element, because the soft skills are what come to play in leadership and building and sustaining trust, inspiring people. Those things are leadership things. And project management doesn't address those things. Project management is really technical skills, the what we call the hard skills, so to speak.
Yep.
Anyway, might be off.
Don't digress. No. I'm gonna stay right here. No, you're not. If you're on a rant, then we're gonna rant together, because I love this topic and it's something that I'm particularly passionate about. So when you say soft skills, it makes me think there's an author, Simon Sinek. He's a best-selling author in the business world, but I recently watched a quick video of his, and he said there's no such thing as soft skills. There are the technical skills, the hard skills, and then there's human skills. And those human skills are often referred to as soft skills. But as you're alluding to, those are absolutely vital, and ones that we as an industry don't focus on. And I think that's wrong, or I think that's a missed opportunity. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
Well, you could call them, and Sinek is I got to see him speak once. He's quite an
cool
speaker too.
Sure.
But he calls them human skills. I might look at them as leadership skills. I might get people more excited about them, because everyone, everyone is interested in leadership development. And how
better branding, yeah.
A lot of people talk about one of the key aspects of leadership is empathy. And empathy is definitely, a human skill, a people skill. And the maybe a challenge, and it might be a stereotype, but I can see it being true as well, is that technical people, engineers, commercial people, have focused on those technical skills, and they really don't get training or get introduced to those other skills. And so where do you get exposure to leadership? That's, we talked a little bit before about mentoring. There's informal mentoring that goes on, and where you learn from both your good bosses and your bad bosses, but developing those leadership skills, it's really an informal process these days.
That's a good point. I think about my own upbringing within the industry, and I was fortunate enough when I was still green and cutting my teeth that there were, some more senior folks that had been in the industry 20, 30 years that had been there, done that. And they took me under their wings. But one of the big emphasis was about, the quote unquote soft skills. Let's call them leadership skills. I like that better. The emphasis was on the leadership skills. You can learn the technical skills, the job skills, but it was really the leadership skills that took me longer to develop, because they take longer in many cases to develop. I'm not sure what is your experience with that?
Yeah, I think, I got thrown into that early, and in 89, we started a company in Sudbury called BLM, and Laminin was one of the partners. And he was a very, very interesting person, very successful in the construction industry. And I was able to learn a lot from him. That was definitely an informal relationship. He was one of the partners in the business. But most of my, if you want to call it, leadership training has been informal, and it's been thrown into the fire. Company in 89, totally. Running a company, but I think people recognize a couple of skills kind of below the surface, and that pun wasn't intended. But just a couple of things that maybe I could apply and help in a successful business, but they didn't know. They were taking a chance on me. But I've been lucky enough to do a few startups and learn from each of them. And cementation was the culmination of that. I got my word together there. The lessons learned at BLM, and then I had a company called Mind Project Services. The lessons learned in those two companies, I applied them full bore at the start of cementation, and really cut through some of the learning curve or some of the startup pain when you start up a company. So, I just benefited from being in the right place at the right time and listening to some people that knew what they were doing. So,
yeah,
be informal.
Yeah, well, you benefited from that, but you would have put in the hard work too, because it takes that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It wasn't easy.
Yeah, no, it's not. As an entrepreneur, I'm curious. What are some of the takeaways that you learned at, you said, mining services or mine project services, and then BLM, that you took to, creating and building cementation?
Well, I'll
that stand out.
Yeah, one very telling example is when we started BLM, our partner was the bank, and we started small. And when I say small in contracting, I think our first project was an $80,000 project, which in our business is a small project even at that time.
Yeah, sure.
And the idea was to build our way up. Banks like slow, steady growth. But what happened is the market starts to brand you. How you advertise, no matter how you present, the market has a perception of you. And the perception of the market was we were a local own construction company, not necessarily mine development, not shaft sinking. So despite the fact that we had the people and the capability to do more, it was really hard to get on the bidders list for some of these larger jobs.
Okay, I can see that.
So when we started cementation, we did it differently. our bank, so to speak, was Caverna.
Mm,
So they were the financial supporter, and they
okay.
had construction. The
Mhm.
other thing we did is we targeted the 5 biggest jobs going on in Canada,
Okay.
the ones we went after.
Mm,
I was very focused on making sure that we didn't get branded in the market as a small entry-level contract.
okay.
So we went big right away.
Mm,
And that was important because, like I say, the experience at BLM, I was able to apply that when we started cementation. So
and how did that go? What's that?
that was
Sorry.
one example.
Yeah, no, and a good one. I think it's a good one. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper on that. No pun intended with that one either. But the what are some of the things that you learn, going from cementation, going after those big fish? It's an interesting strategy. I like it. But what were some of the maybe the growing pains, or how did you get yourselves ready to put your big boy pants on and play on the big projects?
Well, it's, I'll tell another story is, and this was from BLM days, but a friend of mine was working at a shanty in Ghana.
Okay.
Said, you should come over here. We've got a project coming up.
Hmm.
And I said, sure, but we were a small Sudbury-based company.
Mm-hmm.
I got over there, and the procurement agent for the owner for a shanty said, "Oh, you made a long trip for nothing." And I said,
Mm.
and he said, "Well, we don't really think this is the job for you. You're a pretty small group." And so that wasn't very encouraging. Anyway, the next I presented, no, we won the project.
Hmm.
And what happened was, what they explained to me after is all the big companies spent all their time talking about how great they were, how many projects they've done, this type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't in that position. So
Mm.
is we put all our ideas on the table. This is
Mm.
do your job. We had
Okay.
approaches, but all of our presentation was about their project,
Mm.
make them successful. And that was a lesson learned is, it's not about telling the client how great a contractor you are. It's about talking about their project and how you can work together to make it successful. And that's simplifying things a bit, but that was our approach. We did a lot of research and background. We talked to people from the client before, informed what was coming up in their company, what their interests were. We were very interested in partnering.
Mm.
And our potential clients, actually 2 of our potential clients were interested in that model as well, because they weren't being successful on their capital projects. So they wanted to do something different. And we also wanted to do something different. So we were pretty aligned from the start. And they liked that. They knew the people on our team. And so they had confidence in us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we built from there. Out of those 5 projects we focused on, we won 3.5 of them.
Okay.
Half at 777, we went after the shaft and didn't get it, but we were awarded the development.
Okay.
So, and then there was Onaping Depth, and there was Kid number 4 shaft. These were big projects at the time, and we were a new company, but we had strong financial backing, and we had people that had a lot of experience in big projects.
Mm-hmm.
So you emphasize the experience of your people,
Sure.
not necessarily the track record of your company.
Mm-hmm.
And there was that foundation of trust as well.
Yeah, there would have been if you knew them and they knew you. That would be inherent. Either they trusted you or they didn't. So clearly they did. Otherwise, they'd have told you to go packing. That, Roy, you said something that I want to circle back to. You said you were very interested in partnerships and partnering. One of the things that you and I have talked about a few times is collaboration and partnering and various types of different relationships like that. At that time, what was it about partnerships that you were drawn to?
Yes, I had, again, informal. I'd been involved in a project in the mid 80s that I felt was very successful. And we had a great working relationship with the owner.
Okay.
A great working relationship with the other contractor who was building the mill. We the shaft.
Hmm.
And I watched our project manager. I was chief engineer on the project, but I watched our project manager be the de facto leader. He was the glue. He was a guy everyone wanted to work with, and he kind of brought it all together, and it was very informal. But when all was said and done, there were groups of people all working together, and I'd been on other projects that didn't happen. So that just made sense to me. And then I started, then we were approached by a client that wanted to do that.
Okay.
The company I was with at the time wasn't too keen on it, which I thought was interesting. So when we started cementation, I knew there was an interest in the market for it. Knew it was the best way to do a project, or my own opinion was it was the best way to do a project. And I also knew that our financial backer, Caverner, had experience partner in the UK.
Okay.
So I started to do some research into their projects and got feedback from them on what they were doing, work that was done on the channel in different areas. You know, the experience in the UK with partnering and collaboration is interesting because the models were well developed. They didn't bring the success that you would have thought of. The reasons for that when you delved into it. So we had one client in particular that was really interested in the model. We were very interested in it. So that was something we could build on. And the other aspect of starting cementation is we were offering a design build service, which had disappeared in our industry due to ability and some other issues. But it's something we felt was really the best way to do a project. It's not a fit for all projects for different reasons, but on large, the type of large projects we're involved in, it's a great model. So we set up our company to do that. We promoted it. We had a few clients that really liked the approach, and that got us started.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. What are some of the things, like reflecting now on those engagements and developing those partnerships? What are some lessons learned or some takeaways or some things that you would want to impart on others when, you know, considering going into a collaborative environment or a partnering environment, or some things that are just stick out as key in your mind?
There's so many lessons learned there. From a contractor's perspective, don't go into a collaborative arrangement to reduce risk. That's not the way you do it. You do it so when the project runs into challenges, and they all do,
of course,
a partner, the owner that you can work with instead of battling with over commercial terms. You work with over the technical issues to reduce delays and to deal with the challenges. So that, from a contractor's perspective, it's about a relationship, and it's not a commercial model. From an owner's perspective, the same thing, but in a bit of a different way. I think sometimes owners are nervous about, you know, taking on all the risk and all the latitude it gives a contractor. There's a lot of benefits from an owner's perspective to a collaborative arrangement, and they have to understand that at the start so they can leverage it and make the most of it. And often I see owners looking at it as a commercial model, and it's not. I go back to the term of relationship model. It's how you work with your contractors and with your engineering group and with your construction management firm or whoever else is involved. If it devolves into a commercial model, then you know, it becomes a traditional contract, so to speak, and you lose all the leverage and benefits of that relationship, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, of course, this is all our opinion, so that's all good.
I won't say that term again, because it's understood.
Yeah, it's understood for sure. We'll put a little disclosure. This is all in Roy's opinion and in Jason's opinion. So what the term relationship model, what does that mean to you?
I think it's about, well, I can give you some concrete examples. So and I won't
Absolutely.
name projects, but one project we did, which was quite successful, we were engaged early on the project and we worked together on the estimate.
Okay.
And I mean, we worked together, we would ask the owner about what costs they have for explosives and what they're doing. And we would look at what we were getting together. We would figure out the best price for the project. We looked at concrete costs, which in a shaft job are usually substantial. We looked at all these things together. And then we evaluated the bid together. Well, traditionally, when a contractor will bid it, some of us will review the bid. In this case, the owner, there were two people from the owner's team that were experiencing the work. They were part of our review team. They saw all the estimate, all the backup, everything. They had questions. And at one point, I thought it was a breakthrough when one of the owner's team said, I don't think you have enough money in for this item. It may seem like a small thing, but in contracting, we're always questioned as to, why does this cost so much? Or why do you have so much? When you start working together as a team, that was on the estimate. The other thing we work together on, which is critically important, and we don't do it right on most projects, is the risk estimate. Is looking at the risk items, what they'll cost, how much time they'll take, and being realistic about it. And working together on it is very important, because if the contractor is presenting a risk estimate, then the owner is looking at it and saying, well, is that really a risk or not? When you work together on it, you've got alignment right from the start. And from that point, you can begin to look at a commercial arrangement to deal with risk. But I really think you should look at risk first from a technical perspective. And I'm talking about project risk, not health and safety. That's a whole different ballgame.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
But those are two examples of how a real partnership works, is working together early, totally transparent on the numbers, and working together totally realistic on risk.
Makes a lot of sense, Roy. I'm pausing for a moment to see if I can recall a time where, supporting an owner, working for an owner, or even contractor, where on a tender, on an opportunity where we did actually quantify and do a risk estimate. Certainly not something that I see happen in the selection phase of a contractor owner relationship. So you're suggesting that actually happened as part of the initial development of how you guys were going to work together, how guys and gals were going to work together.
We had come to, we had been selected as a design build contractor. So we were going to start engineering. We had a charter. I don't really like that word, because people envision different things from it. But we had an agreement as to how we were going to work together, not a commercial agreement, but a partnering style agreement. So that was the basis. And when we were scoping out the work, and this was very unique on this project, I haven't seen it on another project, but one of the owner's rep came to me and said, can you write the scope? I said, yeah, sure. I mean, it's what I've done for, 25 years. Sure, I can write the scope. He said, it's not our area of expertise. That's why we're hiring a contractor. So can you write the scope? And so I wrote the scope in a lot of detail and explained certain sections of it to the owner's team. And some of the owner's team, were experienced in the work and understood it, and others weren't.
Okay.
But there's an example of trust.
That's what I was thinking.
Is the expert. So who's writing the scope of work for that work? If you have a trust relationship there, you can go to your contractor and say, write out the scope. based on the initial engineering, what's the scope of this project?
Mm-hmm.
Write it out, explain to us what the line items would be, and let's go from there.
Sure. Yeah, sure. You before we hit record, you were, and this is relevant to what you just said. So we were talking about some mentoring that you do and some training, but it was from the lens of a contractor teaching folks within a contractor organization the importance of client relationships and you know, engagements and stuff like that. Tell me a little bit about, you know, why the core to that, or why you feel passionate about doing that.
Well, you know, I do a negotiations course with a few different groups, mainly with cementation, and it's what I call best for project negotiations. So I have this term for project, and it's really win-win based negotiations. And I give a lot of examples of, you know, ones that have worked and worked, ones that maybe have struggled for different reasons. But the whole purpose of that, there's a couple things. It's one, for people to think about negotiations, because if you want to find a place where you can build trust or break down trust in a relationship, negotiating a contract is the place that it happens.
Absolutely.
And so that's an important part of our business, and a lot of people don't recognize that, because few people that get involved in those formal negotiations of a high-level contract. Right. But everyone in our company is involved in one way or another in relationship building. Other project, or the other training I do with the team is a bit of a misnomer. It's called Best for Project Marketing, but it's really about branding and about relationships. And it is lessons learned about what helps build relationships, what tears them down. And I think a lot of people don't realize some of the things that can harm a relationship. You know, when you're negotiating a contract and you've agreed to changes, and you forget to make some of those changes in the draft and you send it back to the owner. Right away, the owner's saying, well, why did they leave this out? Obviously, they're trying to pull something on us. So it's critically important to make sure, these seem like little things, but they can really harm a relationship early in the game. So it's about all these smaller lessons learned that apply to all of us.
That's a good one. I've thought about it in the context of myself and what Prime Contract Solutions does, which is negotiate a lot of, you know, high level contracts. And so we put a ton of importance on exactly that. Like, you can't, even if you're going to change a comma, you know, you got to let them know, because you could break down that trust. But I didn't think about it in the context of, you know, sharing that, you know, with a bigger audience and the significance of it. So I appreciate you calling that out, because I think it's really important, really important.
Yeah, that's one example. There's lots of examples, and unfortunately, they're learned. It's what I call expensive education.
Yeah.
So trying to pass these things on so that people don't make the same mistakes. But yeah, it's one of the things. And I'm trying to remember. I think we talked about this briefly before, not earlier today, but previously, about how, as an industry, we're not very good at learning lessons learned.
Lessons unlearned.
A lot of our lessons learned, but then we go to the next project and make the same mistakes. And you know, part of that is the mobility in the industry. So people that were on this project 2 years ago aren't at that company anymore, or somewhere else, or are involved in operations and not projects. And it's really tough to institutionalize those lessons learned. Found that even with some of our longest term clients, is what worked on the last 3 projects, it's not on the 4th project. Well, it's a team. So I'm still trying to get my head around that one. That's a challenge.
It is a challenge. Yeah, we joke in our circle that they're not lessons learned, they're lessons unlearned.
Oh, okay.
Because you're exactly right. It's that congruency is really tough, from project to project, company to company, to maintain that consistency of a team, or the major body of a team. It's really tough. It's really hard, and it doesn't happen all that frequently. When it does, it's great things can happen if you've got a good team. No question about it. Well, Roy, what advice would you offer? Looking back 40-year career in mining and metals, what advice would you offer, the new generation of leaders within mining?
I'm excited about that. I gave a convocation speech a little while ago, at a local university, and I think what's happening is things are starting to change rapidly in our industry. And that is uncomfortable for many of us. There's a whole generation that's been trained to do 5-year business plans and meet targets and all those things that are all about stability. And I think we're entering a period now of even more disruption in our industry for a number of reasons. What I think is exciting about that is I think that young people are better equipped to deal with that. What I mean by that is they've gone through, let's say in their 20 years, whatever age they are, they've gone through more change in that time. So they're more acclimatized to change. And I think that's going to be a big benefit for our industry. So I think there's two things happening there. I think there's opportunities for very quick advancement. But I think to do that, the current leadership has to be open-minded and recognize the potential that young people in our industry have to help accelerate those changes, because it's the companies that are going to become flexible and agile that are going to win the day. And the people that resist change, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. But, for a young person, a couple things, and I give this talk to different universities, the mining schools especially, is get summer experience in the mines, work. If you're not networking, you're not working. That's the same. But get to know as many people as you can in the industry, because no matter what industry you're in, it's who you know. It really helps you to move up. And
totally agree.
What did Sinek call them? The human skills? I was going to say soft skills, but
the human skills. Yeah.
And the key one I talk to students about is communication. Communication isn't just about talking, but about listening. And I find that that's a learned skill, and nobody's training people in it. And that breeds empathy, that breeds trust. All of those things come from the ability to listen. And how does the saying go? First understand, then be understood. First. But communication is critical. So that's a few of the things I talk to students about. But
those are powerful
opportunities in our industry to advance quickly and to change things.
Yeah, I like that. I think those are both powerful. And you said, for other folks in the industry, being open-minded, and I think the concept that I like to apply is being ridiculously open-minded or radically open-minded, and not filtering what could be true. So I agree with you, and I think that that's great. And the listening, that can't be overstated. I mean, it's really a learned skill. I agree with you, but one that does breed empathy, one that does build trust. So I think there's a lot of significance to that. So I appreciate you sharing that.
I got to answer that, Jason. There's, one thing in my training session that I do is I tell our people, if you're setting up an agenda with a client, for the safety share, the first thing on the agenda should be client update on the project. We want to listen to the client. So we don't into that meeting and just spend the whole time talking about things. We want to be able to listen, because every client I've seen is passionate about their project, and every
Mhm.
listen to them talk about it, I learn something. So, how do you work on that listening? Well, one of the ways is to make it structured, make it part of every meeting where you're going to listen to people explain how important their project is, why it is, what their real focus is. Anyway, I could go on, and I already have. So
No, it's all really good stuff. And I think I like I said, I do appreciate you sharing that, because I think there's a lot of value and wisdom in those words, Roy. So I think imparting that knowledge on others is powerful. Roy, before we wrap up, there's a question that we ask all of our guests, which is a two-parter, which is, where do you want the industry to be in 10 years? Is one. The second part is, where do you think it's going to be in 10 years? You can take that however you want, whichever order you prefer.
Yeah, there's some, one thing we haven't talked about, and one thing I'm very passionate about, is safety. And where would I like the industry to be in 10 years? Is certainly, I would like to see us at zero harm.
Absolutely.
Would like to see health and safety front and center, and all of our people protected. I'd love to see projects being successful. The majority of projects, which isn't the case, as you and I know, it's not the case now.
Right.
I'm a bit, I don't know if I'd call it idealistic, but the whole concept of our industry being first and foremost most focused on sustainability, the environment, and our communities, I find fascinating. And what that leads to is profitability as an enabler, not as the first goal. We want to create a healthy community. We want to sustain the environment. We want to produce metals and minerals that are going to improve the quality of life for everyone. The way we do that is by sustainable mining. But to do that, we need to make a profit. So the profit doesn't become the first goal, it becomes the enabler. Anyway, like I say, maybe a little bit idealistic or naive, but I would love to see that happen. I see a few companies that are starting to model themselves that way.
Yeah, I can think of a couple.
We'll see.
Yeah. No, that's right. One of which, just for this, is Inspire Resources, run by Andy Reynolds. He's got a similar vision in terms of that. So I think that's worth mentioning for anybody that's interested in that topic, which is a good one for sure. Okay, well, Roy, what did I not ask you that you were hoping that I would?
Oh, there's probably lots there, but
sure.
Certainly, one of the things happening now, which is exciting from a safety point of view, is autonomous and remote operations. And I think that's the next step change towards zero harm in our industry. And it's up to us as management leaders to adopt that technology, to be open, as you mentioned, to be, I don't know how you said it, not just open-minded, but
ridiculously or radically.
Yeah. Open-minded.
Yeah.
But if we can begin to incorporate some of these new technologies, we can protect our people even better than we are now.
Well said.
Projects are a tough one because, like you said, lessons unlearned. We know a lot about how to execute projects successfully, and yet we still struggle with that.
I know.
Partnership,
really
collaboration can help. There's all kinds of things I'd like to see in the project space. I'd love to see 80% of projects on time and on budget. until we can get away from, I call them approvability studies as opposed to ability studies.
I like that. I see where you're going too.
We put estimates together that can get board approval and have a high net present value. Realistic. Yeah, and then there's criticism on a poor estimate.
Right.
The estimate wasn't the project estimate; it was an estimate of the board, and that's one of the challenges we have in our industry. And so it literally is right from the top. There are changes that need to be made when it comes to project execution, right from board level right through to working at the face. So that's a long, drawn-out discussion on its own that I know you and I have had some of that discussion, but we don't have time to delve into that too much today.
Well, maybe we need a Roy Slack part 2 where we can get straight into that. Yeah, because so Roy, before we sign off, a really good conversation. Really appreciate all of the valuable insights and nuggets that you bring to the industry, not just in this conversation, but in other aspects of what you do. So thank you for that. I mean that. That's a heartfelt thank you. If what's the best way for people to find you, to contact you, to learn more?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm open to connections that are involved in our industry and interested. I'm still on the board of Cementation, so my email address is easy. It's roy.slack@cementation.com. So I can be, those are probably the 2 easiest ways to reach me. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, my contact information is there as well. So I'm always, I said it earlier, if you're not networking, you're not working. I'm always, LinkedIn is a great tool.
Perfect. All right, Roy, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for having me, Jason.